Welcome to Season 2 of the Generational Dental Wealth Show. Season 2 is all about increasing dental financial IQ. We do record these live in studio at Team Studios, so if you want to see the video format of this show, go ahead to Spotify or YouTube. Let's hop into it.
Before we hop into today's episode, we wanted to share that this is not legal or financial advice. The thoughts that we share here are our own, and these are for educational purposes only. Kingsley is my CPA. He gives me financial advice. Please seek or solicit the help of your team and your financial advisors for your financial future. Hello. Welcome back to the Generational Dental Wealth Show. My name is Dr. Jermaine Ifedi.
My name is Kingsley Ifedi, CPA.
Man, today we're going to be hopping into a fun conversation.
Oh yeah.
We've been receiving a lot of requests to have this particular conversation. So we're finally going to get into it, and it's going to answer a lot of questions that people have been having for a very, very long time. Kingsley, what topic we're discussing today?
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, when people sometimes meet with me, they can leave the conversation with a long face. But I always try to make sure I give them as much value, right? And what we're talking about is taxes again, right? How fitting. And you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about taxes in the middle of the year? Why not? We'll get to that. Today we'll be talking about the difference between a tax preparer and a tax strategist.
Okay.
And, maybe what you would need in your life and your progression as you go down your dental wealth journey.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
so I like to think about it personally like a dentist, like a general dentist versus a specialist, right?
Yeah.
Like if for your tax preparer, they're more than likely they're going to be a general dentist. They can do a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of general dentists who can do a lot of things. Like shout out to UNC, they got us ready to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that are just personally not in my wheelhouse, right?
Yeah.
I need to get into better hands to make sure that patient has a better experience, right?
Yeah.
So I like to think about that in the form of a tax strategist, that their main specialty is to take you from where you are to where you want to get to, utilizing the tax code as a benefit to you.
Yeah, man, exactly. And like I said before, at the end of the day, these are not created equal. There's room for both of them in the world, and there may be room for both of them even in your personal, like I said, journey. So I guess I'll kind of just kick us off. The biggest difference, at least in my mind, a tax preparer is looking backwards. A tax strategy is looking forwards, right? And we'll kind of get into what those differences are and what makes up that kind of mindset. But at the end of the day, right, a tax preparer is typically, what you probably been getting used to so far, right, is where you go at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, and you bring in all of your tax documents. You bring your W-2s for the year, you bring in your 1099s, you bring in your home mortgage statement, all of these different statements, and the preparer sits in front of you. Or, if you're meeting with them online, or even if you're doing it yourself, you put in all of your data, right? Did you have dependents? Do you have a spouse? Are you filing jointly? What state do you live in? If you're in Texas, you don't have a state tax. But if you're in California, you have one of the highest state taxes. So you learn all these little nuances and you input them into the computer. And at the end, right, it outputs a number, right? This is how much you made for the year. This is how much you withheld for the year. This is how much you've prepaid for the year. And then this is ultimately what your tax bill or what your tax refund in some cases might be.
Now that's really good. I think most people don't even know, and you can speak about this professionally.
Yeah.
People think you have to work with a CPA to be able to file your taxes.
No,
you don't.
Yeah,
you don't. And people don't understand that. So naturally, people always think, okay, CPA taxes.
Yeah.
When there's different levels when it comes to it, when it comes to the actual tax side of things.
Yeah.
So personally, I like to think about it like, when do I need to call in a tax strategist?
Yeah.
And, that's the kind of question that I would pose to you. When personally would I know, okay, this situation is going to require a specialist, a tax strategist to help me mitigate my taxes in the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one, and I don't know if there's any hard rules or any fast rules, but, just getting a sense of your financial journey so far, if there's any major life changes, right? Buying a practice is a huge life change. It might be the biggest life change that you go through. You graduate in dental school and you get into the dental profession. Your income literally can 10x overnight. So just thinking through those life changes might kind of prompt, okay, you know what? I've been going to H&R Block these last 5 years while I was in dental school doing a side gig, but now that I'm making real money, is it time to get that tax strategist? And probably the answer you'll probably come to is yeah, right? Because at the end of the day, like we talked about in some previous episodes, it's about take home, right? You're bringing in all of this money, but you're not taking it home, right? All of that is going back out the door. So, it's no one rule, but at the end of the day, get a feel of your situation. If you feel like, right, and if you're seeing, right, your money evaporate, well, like I hear so many times when I speak to clients, then maybe it's time to say, you know what, I don't need a tax preparer anymore. I need a tax strategist.
Now that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So, because like me personally, I like to think about it, and I feel like the majority of the public thinks about it in a way like when it comes to taxes, my only goal is to get it as low as possible and just forget about it. I don't really want to think about it. I want to avoid taxes. That's really it. But since I've worked with you as a tax strategist, it's helped me understand that there are ways that we can use the tax code in a way to build wealth.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest mind shift mentally I had to have, that, you know what, like instead of looking at taxes as a bad thing, how can we look at the tax code and figure out, and you always say that the tax code is a series of incentives and disincentives to do what the government wants us to do, right?
Yeah.
So we lower our taxes by doing what the government wants us to do, right? So how do I look at what the government wants me to do and do it so it lowers my tax bill? So and instead of moving instead of taking it from a defensive standpoint, right? And trying to figure out, oh my gosh, taxes poor me. How do I feel like a tax strategist, and what you help me with is get on the offensive, right?
Yeah.
It helped me figure out, okay, if I'm going to do the things I'm going to do anyways, which is acquire real estate, which is start businesses, which is hold funds in different accounts, how do I do it in a tax advantaged way, right? Yep. So I think the biggest thing that honestly I get from you is you take all the different parts of my life and you put it together in a way that makes sense on paper,
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how you go about doing it. Can you go through a little bit of your process? How do you go about taking somebody apart and putting them back together in a way that now their tax situation is now an asset versus a liability to them? Yeah.
And I'm going to answer that question, and I'm going to kind of hop into the process.
Okay.
The quick answer is really a two-step process that I personally believe in. It's number one, getting a tax projection, right? I do a tax projection with every client twice a year. Typically one in May, right after tax season. We have 5 months of the year that we've already been into. And so we have a good foundation of where we're at. And then once at the end of the year, typically in November. The reason being, gives us about 2 months to put some things into place, make some last minute changes and updates. And then, we can start implementing those. And the second, right after we have that tax projection, right, we're projecting out what do we think you're going to owe. Then we're going to say, okay, now that we know what you're going to owe, how can we reduce that bill? Right now that we have time, now that, we're not at the end of the year, now that we have time, how can we reduce that bill? And I say this all the time. There are always two tax seasons. There's a tax paying season and there's a tax saving season. And a lot of people only know about the tax paying season. That's January through April. Okay. At the end of the day, there's a tax saving season, and that's all year. So I think you hit it right on the head. And it's funny, we were talking pre show that it's probably more patriotic to have no tax bill. And the reason being, at least in
Hold on, back that up.
Yeah.
I want to make sure you clarify what you just said.
Yeah.
You said it's actually better for the government if our tax bill is zero.
Yeah. It is more patriotic. If you're looking at the entire tax code, it's more patriotic to have no tax bill than to have a huge tax bill.
Okay.
And the reason being, like you've already said, the IRS, right, Congress, they put into place these incentives to say, if you do X, Y, and Z, these things that we already want you to do, then your tax bill gets closer and closer to zero. Okay. Right. So if I'm taking a look at what these incentives are, like you've already said, real estate, right? They want you to house people. If I'm taking a look at investing, putting money away for retirement, they don't want people to have to lean on Social Security as much as they, you know what I mean? Yeah. So they're incentivizing these things to build your American dream while helping the government, so that come tax time, your bill gets lower and lower and lower. Right. So that's why in my heart, I'm so passionate about it. Right. Because it's not just about sticking it to the government. It's about, at the end of the day, these are some incentives that will help you build your American dream if you pay close attention to them, and if you work with somebody that can understand and interpret these things for you.
So as business owners, right, when we get incentives to be able to write off like business mileage, to be able to write off meals, to be able to write off, building purchases, to be able to write off, employees, compensations. When we're able to write these things off, technically we're doing what the government wants us to do, right? Which is to stimulate the economy by buying vehicles, by stimulate the economy by buying real estate, by being able to provide jobs for people. When we're buying real estate, right, especially when it comes to actual real estate that people live in, now we're providing housing for people. So you're talking about in just a few investments, which is a business and some real estate, you have now housed more citizens. You have now bought cars from the biggest car manufacturers. You have now purchased real estate to now increase the amount that they can tax in capital gains taxes. Now you have now provided jobs for people, so now people can be contributors to societies versus individuals who have to receive from society. So you have done so much just by being an active participant in what's going on. And again, that's why I like to think about it, as the average tax preparer is not helping bring the picture together like that. Yeah. The average tax preparer is trying to figure out, okay, bring me your paperwork, bring me your receipts, I'll tell you how much you owe, right? And they're not really advising, if we put it that way, right? Exactly. I feel like the tax strategist is trying to put it together like, listen, I know you're here today and I know what your goals are. How do we make your goals more in line with the tax code? So now you're being paid to make your goals happen. Yeah,
and I think you've touched on something that's really important. As advisors, in a way, we are not there to tell you what to do. We're there to take the lifestyle and the choices that you firmly believe in and say, hey, these are the consequences, or these are the advantages of making these choices. For instance, right, I have some clients that don't want to be in real estate, that hate real estate, that don't really choose to put that on their shoulders. I have clients that are completely opposite. They're saying, hey, I want to be able to, I have one rental property, I'm addicted, I want to get as many as I can. And at the end of the day, right, I have some clients that want to purchase a vehicle, or I have clients that, call me and say, hey, I'm looking at, purchase this asset. What is it going to mean for me on the tax side? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I explain this every day to clients, we don't want to make these decisions to lower your tax bill just for the sake of lowering your tax bill. Yep. Right. These are transactions, like Doc already said, that you're already making, that we could say, hey, wait. If we do it like this, or if we structure it like this, and if we do it with this timing, hey, instead of waiting until January to get that business vehicle, right? You have a big tax bill this year. What does it look like to get it, a few months early? But we're just tweaking a few of these decisions. We're giving you some of the background information on what it could cause or how it could benefit you, instead of just making this whole creative big lifestyle change that honestly you won't even be happy with.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to put it, because I think the best tax strategists have that kind of realization. They know that, listen, we're not going to buy things. We're not going to create a tax strategy to try to necessarily make you more money, right? Yep. But what we're going to do is, just like at a bowling alley, right? We're going to put up safety rails to help guide your decision making to maximize what you were already going to do. Yep. If you were already going to start a business, if you were already going to purchase a car, if you already were going to invest in your retirement, if you were already going to do whatever you're going to do, how do we do it in the most advantageous way possible? And I think it's just personally, I like to think about it like a school counselor. You're already going to be in school and you're going to have to major in something, right? And your advisor's job is to help you figure out, based off of what you like or what you don't like, how do we find and put you into the best major, right? The best courses possible to bring out what's already within you. Yeah. And I think it's very similar to that same way. How do we bring out the hidden potential that already exists within your lifestyle, that exists within your tax liability? And how do we mobilize that tax liability to become more of an asset? So now the savings that you have, you can put it into more tax incentivized behavior. So now you can purchase more of what the government wants you to purchase, or now you can park it into more advantageous places. So man,
that's good.
That was good, man.
Yeah, and what I want to do, especially for our viewers that watch this, and I always try to come with goodies. I love doing just quick visuals. I'm gonna pull up just an example of what a tax projection is. Okay. I'll walk you through what I typically do for a client if they came in and they say, "Hey, man, I'm suffering here. Help me out. I need to be able to save some taxes, man." So, like I said, if you don't already watch us live on YouTube or Spotify visuals, go ahead and do that. That's the best place to enjoy this podcast. I'm telling you, you're missing out if you're not. So hopping into it, like I said earlier, this is just a quick example, quick visual. And like I said, we typically do this twice a year. Typically sometime in the middle of the year, sometime towards the end of the year, when it's most advantageous. So one thing I love to do with a client when they first come in, go through their tax projection, right? We want to just get to zero. And what I mean by that is just get a good starting foundation of where they're at, what they're going to be looking at as far as tax bills. So in this example, multi-practice office, one solo owner though, looks like they're bringing in about $2.4 million a year. With that being said, all of the expenses that they're incurring for the year is about $1.7 million, leaving them with a net profit of about $700,000. Now, like I always say, government cares about your net profit, what is left over after expenses. So that $700,000 is now considered into the total income for the year. Now, with that being said, like I said, if you're tracking us, if you're watching this visually, it's much easier to follow here. But if you're not, YouTube, Spotify, visuals, this example is going to be a really good one. Outside of the practice, other things we need to consider is what is the W-2 income for the household, right? The spouse, the actual main doctor, right? Also, as well as other types of income. So if they're selling any assets, right? If they sold a whole lot of their crypto and made a lot of money last year, if they sold one of their homes and they made money, or if they have real estate holdings, et cetera, right? We need to consider all income sources. So in this example, total income sources brought income for the year to about $840,000. Now, projecting out, we did an analysis on how much we think taxes are going to be. In this example, doctor didn't live in a state that have a state tax, right?
Wow, that's a big game changer right there.
A huge advantage, right? Because I mean, we always talk about California and laugh at that and how that's up to 12% a lot of times, right? So anyways, they're in a state that doesn't have a state tax, but federal, they still have a tax bill of about $140,000. That's pretty much the moment where their head explodes and I can see their eyes get a little glossy. But that's why they come into, and speak with somebody like me. A tax preparer is just going to say, hey, you need to go ahead and cut these checks to the IRS right now so that you don't get any penalized, you stay out of trouble. That's a tax preparer, right? There's room in the world for tax preparers, obviously. At the end of the day, if you as a taxpayer, if you didn't do your due diligence beforehand, it's not much you would even be doing at that point once you see a tax preparer. But me as a tax strategist, right, when I'm sitting in front of a client, we're saying, okay, you're going to owe $140,000. We're in May, right? We're not even at the end of the year yet. We have time. We want to put certain things in place to say, okay, how can we bring that $140,000 down and reduce that, right? And everybody's case is going to be different.
So you're basically saying that a tax strategist is better suited for somebody who knows that they have a more complex situation and they need to get ahead of it versus someone, I guess, a tax preparer. You're pretty much going to be a simpler preparation. I can bring you the paperwork, you can file it. Yep. But if somebody who is having a larger tax bill like this, they need help finding strategies to mitigate that ahead of time. And they came to you in May, so they're good.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when we start the conversation and we're meeting periodically throughout the year to say, okay, you have kids, right? It's 8, 9, 10 years old. I know I come from a family of business owners, right? So I know I was even at 10 years old shredding paper in the office, sending off a few emails for mom and dad, right? So in general, right, we try to say, okay, tax strategy. You have kids. What does it look like to place them on payroll? Do it ethically in the right way. But what does it look like to put them on payroll? Okay. Right? Tax strategy, or just a quick reference, that's about $14,000. You can pay them. That's tax-free income to the kid, but the practice receives a tax deduction of about $14,000 as of the time of this recording, right? Other things could, like we have already talked about, include other different strategies, such as like the Augusta rule that we've talked about in previous episodes, right? Your practice being able to rent out your home, or excuse me, you being able to rent out your home to your practice, right? You get that income. It's not taxable income, and the practice gets a tax deduction for that. Yep. So there's a lot of different tax strategies. I mean, we can make 20 episodes about each tax strategy, but for the most part, we don't just say, hey, your bill is $140,000. Good luck. See you next year. We say, okay, how can we get this 140 down to something that is more reasonable and more consistent, given some things that we can implement today.
Being a practice owner as myself, I'm honestly, it feels more comforting knowing that I have somebody in this with me. Yeah. If you just tell me, you owe 140, again, even if you don't make this much, let's say cut it in half and you make half of what they make and you take it home for 100 and you still owe a tax bill of 70K. I mean, getting somebody telling you owe 70K or 140K and you have not prepared for that is a very scary thought, to be honest with you. And the feds is not somebody you want to get behind with, all right? Because they're very aggressive on collecting their debt and they charge a lot of interest. So honestly, having a tax strategist work with me on this plan makes me feel like I'm not in this alone, and I don't have to like bring this to my wife to help her try to crunch numbers and figure this out, or whoever your spouse is. You have a qualified professional to work on this, man. So I appreciate you breaking down what the difference between a tax preparer and a tax strategist is. As we continue to delve into deeper topics, right, I'm excited to figure out how we can start using the tax code as an asset versus looking at it from a defensive liability perspective.
Perfect, man. Perfect. I enjoyed this one.
All right, man. Thank you, everybody, for coming in today. This is Generational Dental Wealth. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Peace.
All right.